Learn a Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Nun Amid Aleph. And the last thing we learned about was different rules as to you can in these instances you can only collect from the Buddhists from the lowest, the poorest quality fields. So, for example, if you're collecting from the Yisraelim, you can only collect from the Buddhists in the poorest quality fields. So the Gemara says over here, the two dots, about 12 lines on the top of the page. Amar Mazutra Breder of Nachman, Mazutra, the son of Nachman, Mashmed of Nachman. He said the name of the Nachman. Shtar Chayv, Hayet al Yisraelim, it is a contract, a loan. That's the father, the borrower passed away, and now we're going to the children, the orphans. Afal P. Just started to that's so even though even though that clearly you wrote that you're going to give me for the best of the fields, a lender generally only collects from bainis, but you specifically wrote in the contract that I have the right to collect the best of the fields. Yet Einu gave him as a Buddhist. When he goes to Yisraelim, he only gets as a Buddhist. Amar Abaye, you're right. I'll prove it to you. Generally speaking, he rightfully collects from Bainis, and yet what does he collect from Yisraelim? Umiyasif is a Buddhist. So even if you up it and you raise it in the contract, you raise it to a Yiddius, and the contract that says Yiddius doesn't matter. He's still only entitled to the Buddhist. So what are you comparing? An ordinary Baal Chayv, where there, if you remember, the din really about Chayv is the Buddhist. According to Ulas, the only reason why we're giving Bainis is because what the Kana take an Olam, because we don't want them to close the door. We want them to continue lending money. But in the case where you wrote it in the contract, that's Mahatoid, he's entitled to Idius. Who says then you get the Buddhist? It's a Buddhist. How do I know that? Like Ulu learns out. Ulu says the Mahatoid. I mean, Mahatoid about Chayb is entitled only to the Buddhist. It says in the passage when you come to collect, let's say, collateral from the borrower, Bachutz Tam, but it says in the passage you stand outside, and the person that you borrowed from will bring it out to you. You kind of storm into the house and seize whatever you want to seize. You have to wait till he brings it out. What do you think a person will bring out to you? What do you think he's going to bring out to you? The poorest quality of his kalim. Why would a person voluntarily give you his best? So really, a Balchayv is entitled merely to as a Buddhist. Balchayv is only Kadesh Lake and love is only Midrabanon, so that he should have an incentive to lend money. The Gabe Yasme, what did we do by Yisraelim? Mirabana, that I said, you know what? Since you never anticipate the person's going to die, so it's not going to be really, it's not going to tell people, oh, I'm going to get the Buddhist, I'm no longer in your lend. But generally speaking, the person you lend the money to is going to be alive in 30 days or in a year, whatever it was. So we went back to the din of the Raisa. Elahach over here, if you incorporate in the shtat, you made a special condition, even the din of the Raisa of Idias, so now you're entitled to Idias. Then afilu miyasme nami bidis. Even from Yisraelim, also you should get Idias. Says the Gemara, according to Rav, Avram Chazar says what? That he is entitled to Idias. Sounds like. So there's a question. Avram Chazar said, "Ein nifroyim menichsi Yisraelim element as a Buddhist. That you collect from Yisraelim only as a Buddhist." And he adds, "Afilu ein nezikin, even if it's nezakin." Now, we learned before that Mahatoida, mate of Karma, mate of Sadeh, the Karma, that's Mahatoida, you collect medias, and yet you get the Buddhist. The Rav is whole part is weird, so the Rabbanon, but here's Mahatoida. But I think in Bahan is okay, in Dinam the Nice of Idias, Mahatoida entitled to Idias, and yet by you saying you get from the Buddhist. Says he we're talking about here. No. You know what he's talking about here when he says I feel Idias? We remember according to Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Kiva, you have to pay the Idias of the Mazik. According to Bishmo, you pay the Idias of the Nizik. He holds that if the Buddhists of the Mazik is equivalent to the Idias of the Nizik, we're Mekel, and the Mazik only has to pay the Buddhist. That's Mahatoida. Then in our Mishnah came along, the Rabbanan said, we want the Mazik to pay from his best so he shouldn't go around and damaging other people's things or stealing other things. So in that case there, since Mahatoida, you're entitled to the Buddhist of the Mazik, and with the Rabbanan, we give you Idias. So in the case of Yisraelim, we go back to what the Torah says. And Rabbi Shmuel them the nice in the Sheminim. Open a ticket on because taking the oilam to kinder Rabbanan with the mazik, we were masakin mazik. They got biyasme ukrabanan the nice. So Rabbi says again that when do you collect from this Buddhist from Yisraelim only if it's with the Rabbanan that you deserve something higher. So
This is an exception.
Right. But if Mahatoida you're entitled to Idius, then you say him you still get Idius. That's the rubbish it is.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's a Tana. Abraham the seer. No. First of all, he has a name of Abraham, which is nice. How many Tanaim have Abraham? That's true, yeah, that's also interesting. But it says anybody calls it Abraham, it's very interesting. That's an interesting point.
It actually doesn't say anything.
No,
I'm looking on the side, nobody.
Interesting.
Sometimes it actually comments that, Shem Tanner or something like that. Not a word.
And that's not a problem. We learned that if somebody calls Avram, not that the Abishah call him Avram, but you're even say. So how can you? So how can you?
What is Chizor? What is
the seer?
What is it?
We have to look them up. You know what? We look them up tonight. You should have a chance. We know that. So what ain't it's not so, but Tony Rabbi Lezer and Nifsa, all these interesting people's names. Rabbi Lezer from Nifsa, he said, "Ein nefroyin nichse yisayim. You don't get paid for yisayim. Elamin as a Buddhist, only for the Buddhists. Afilu hein idiots. What's the addition? Even if they're idiots. What do you mean if they're idiots? My affiliates. Lav. I mean, he means to say like Mazuta. Afagav the kosiv idiots b'shtar. Even though it's written idiots in the shtar, nevertheless, yisayim you only get the Buddhists. But Rabbi says no. You know my idiots. Shifai idiots. This is shifai idiots. Shifai idiots means that. That this is the best of your idiots. If the best of your idiots got lost, notice when you at the time of the loan, he had not a field, he had idiots, the best of the best, and then something happened to it. Not that you sold it, but it got damaged, the wind destroyed it, or it got flooded, or something happened to it. So then you lose all your rights and you go down to the Buddhists. That's the case here. What's Pshat? The Rava said he's the Buddhi is going idiots, but Shafai idiots. If the idiots is gone, then gave him in a bainness. You lose the right for idiots and you go to bainness. The Gabi Yasma and by Yisayim Ukavan the Rice. By Yisayim we go back to the trade and say since you lost the Rava has interesting the halacha. This is how Rashi learned. The taste is a little differently. But according to Rashi, if you had Bishas Maisa, not Stam an idiot, but Yiddish idiots, and you lost it, then I can say to you, Mazal Chagoyim. Why do you think I lost it? Because you're Muslims. That the Torah is telling us, they're telling us you have no right to any idiots, even though Mahat Torah. That's what you're supposed to collect from. You're a mazik, and the need the right from the idiots. Since you lost your best field that you had, the whole thing falls, collapses. Takes another shayla very different. Leilu Shafai idiots means sort of connected to idiots. It's takes us on the bottom part here. That's talking about it. It's sitting next to the river. So it constantly gets deflated, it constantly gets flooded. So it's worse than the Buddhists. You can't plant anything there. You can't but you can't plant because the water, you can't tell them. I just wash away all your seeds and all your work. And that's what it means.
The lowest of the low.
Yeah. Next part of the Gemara.
So this is a nice.
It's connected to even if it's connected to idiots. If it's right next to the water bank, yeah. 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 And the chiddush is that the Yisrael can give it to an ordinary person can't give such a field. But the same can give you even for Shafai. Because that's the din by Yisrael. The faces words are Afagav the Griyim is a Buddhist. It's even worse than the Buddhist. And then take a look at this. The pshat is if you damaged Shafayid is if you damage a normal field, you pay this is what the pshat is. If you damage a normal field, you're entitled to idis. But if you damage Shafayidis, then you're only entitled to Beis. In other words, that's the case of it. A mazik normally has to pay idis. But if the damage just a field has so little value, then you're not entitled to idis. You're entitled to give you Beis. By an ordinary person, by someone will give you Zabudius. But according to Rava, an ordinary mazik goes as the Yisraelim, he'll still collect his idiots. It's not like a Bayim Mazut to say that, all the dinim of always by Yisraelim you get from Zabudius. Think about it further. When we say, it says in the Mishnah, when you go to Yisraelim to collect, you only get from Zabudi, the poor quality. Asks, Yisayimim she'amru. When we say Yisayimim, orphans, is there an age? It's Tanim. It's talking about minors. I feel like the adults are the Yisayim. What's the shaila? Do we say Takanti? We're here to step in. Maybe Rachmanis and the Yisayim. Who's going to stand up for them? So therefore, we say, no, what? We're going to go back to what the din Torah is. The Torah says you're only entitled to the Buddhists. That's what you collect. You're only the Buddhists. Because otherwise, they have to sell the property. These Yisayim. Let the person who's entitled to get paid sell the property. Go through the mushanish of selling the property, and he'll collect his money. The Avad Rabbanan. Gabi Yasmi look Tani of Rabbanim. Only for Tani, but the Doilim of Rabbanim, but not for Doilim. Oidu perhaps from the Lemasik Adaita the Malva, or we say, no, it's not because of Takana. It's because the Malva, when he lent his money, he never anticipated the Mislavid will die. The Naflu Nirse Kame Yasme, and he never thought that it'll end up being Yisayim to say, we're worried the Havale Noyel, we're not worried, oh, people stop lending money because the guy dies. I'm only against the Buddhists. People don't think that way because it hardly happens. As you learned before the Gemara, that we don't think people will die. Right, a person leaves some of it again. The Cheskes Chai, we always think the guy's alive. Then even by Gedolim as well, we're going to say that since Gedolim, they don't know, they have no idea what's going on in the father's affairs. So as far as they're concerned, they're like Tanim, and there's no son of Ne'ilas Delis. So therefore, he should cut on the bodies. Says the Gemara. Talk about coming here. The Torah by no, the only reason why we give about Chayvik Bain is because of Ne'ilas Delis. When there's no Ne'ilas Delis, go back to Allah as a Buddhist, and no different what kind of saying you are. Talk about coming here. Torah Abai Kshisha. Abai Kshisha says there's a case that's interesting in Basra. I have the first page. There's an argument. If I had two sons, Kshisha, which means older, and Yenuka. One was called Yenuka, one was called Kshisha. The question is, which is the older, which is the younger? So Taser didn't want to say that Yenuka is actually the older one because he was born when his father was young. They call him junior. It's junior. But then the senior is the younger one because he was born when his father was old. So yeah. Anyway. He clearly says that all Yisayim are the same law. So how do you know which law we're referring to? Maybe that's talking about a case of a shvua. It says if you want to collect money from Yisayim, you always have to swear. And if the father had been alive, he could have asked for a shvua. And now that I'm not telling the labels, we'll be advocates on behalf of Yisayim. So maybe regarding a shvua, whether you're G'daylim or Tani will make you swear. The Gogol b'mil will cut them because he's like a cotton. Avalini is a Buddhist, but regarding the Allah as a Buddhist, we don't know what he would hold, the Baish should hold. Right, Yerchel concludes. Yisayim sha'amru, when we say Yisayim, we say G'daylim b'ein tzor le'mektan. Basically, this is trying to say me. Then the Shvua Bain is a Buddhist. Even as a Buddhist, we say.
G'daylim needs such protection.
I mean, we're saying it's not protection. It's a Buddhist not protection. Shvua, yes, because they don't know if their father's affairs. How do they know if father paid and pay?
But we said also that if they're young, they don't understand value of land.
And then that's something else. That's from selling land. So I'm going to put Rufus. But we're talking about here, regarding collecting money, debts that were owed to the father, or the father owed them. So then, because you're older, that means you know what your father's affair. Who knows the father's affair? You're timing. As far as the Buddha is concerned, we're saying it's not a takana. We're saying forget the takana was that we elevated the Balchayv to Bainis. But there's no reason to have a takana here. People are not going to stop lending money because you're saying they have a hard time. So therefore, because it hardly ever happens, so therefore go back to the halacha. The halacha is entitled to the Buddhist. So the Gemara. Ain't from the Chashibodim, I'll give him the Chaydim. You're not like collect from Shabodim while there's Chaydim and Chaydim. If the borrower himself has assets, even though it might be poor quality, you have to go there first. You cannot go to the purchasers. And there's a Gemara, boy, the Matana Hayach. What happens if the borrower didn't sell the property, gave it away as a gift? Do we protect the rights of the beneficiary as well? That you cannot go back to the beneficiary before you first go to leave and see what assets he has. Or when it comes to the matana, we don't have to protect anybody. We protect them because they paid money. Why should they go through all the hassle? Okay, we're protecting the kuchas. Are we protecting also people recipients of matana? And we had a few times on Machlekes is matana kemech or not, which is similar to what's here. So Gemara, do we say takan to the rabbanim should say the kuchas? Where do you make a takana? We don't want the kuchas to lose out. They work so hard, they pay money for it. Why should anybody just come and take it away? But matana, when it comes to matana, the lekab say lekucha, there's no psei to lekuchas. It didn't cost them anything. Loi, then if let's say the bainis is sitting by the person who received the matana, and the owner of the assets has only poor quality fields, maybe then the lender can go to the bar to the makabel matana and collect his field. Matana nami. Matana is like mecher. What do you mean like mecher? Why did you give him a matana? Why did you give everybody else a matana? Because if he wouldn't have done something for you, something nice for you, so therefore the person did buy it. Therefore, keep saying the and therefore it's like a pseida of lekuchas. In other words, it's like he's losing also. So we have, just like we protect the rights of the lekeach, we should also protect the rights of the person who's mekabel the matana. Actually, we read twice in one day. We have Makshisha. Coming here. That's not a bike. Yeah, but that's his name, Makshisha Mayanuka. But this is Breda Bachis. Yeah, the both of yeah, the bike. Yes, this one the bike. I said for I was thinking what of Chizat. You're right. That's a bike. Yeah, but this is a different person. He's also actually no, Shisha Senior. Shisha Senior. Talk about coming here. Ashchiv Melam. Sorry, Mr. Omer Makshi Brei Rav Chizda Rav Ashi. Toshma, come in here. A lot of years in between. How did he speak to Rav Ashi? Rav Chizda was the Rebbe of the generation of Rabba and Rav Yosef, Rabba's Rebbe. His son would have been the age of Rabba. Rav Ashi was born when Rabba passed away. So Rav Ashi was a very young man. And she's going to be quite old. Toshma, come in here. I proved to you, a person is dying. He said, Tanu. Sounds like he's giving away gifts. But Sayin doing the plane, I want to give $200 to this person. The Gimel made $300 the plane to that person, and the dollar may is the plane to that person. We don't say Kol HaKoydim B'Shtar Zocha. What happens is not enough funds for all three. Do we say, well, the person who named first gets total 200, the next guy gets a total 300, the last guy loses out? They don't say that because you cannot say he didn't mean one should have priority over the other, unless he said the word acharecha. First give him 200, then the balance give him, then the balance give him. Okay, that's the story. If it is acharecha, you can't say three names in one go. So therefore, what happens is only there's supposed to be over here $900, only $600 in the pool. So you divide it 600 by 9 parts, and then you divide it accordingly. Commensurate to whatever the proportions are. Therefore. For example, let's say it turned out to be the person who's dying owes money to somebody. He has the right. What do you call it? He collects them all free. So whatever he takes, they have to subdivide again the parts. You don't say, oh, he only goes to the last person, because there's no last person there. All three were at the same time. But Imama, he said to numerous signs of the pliny. He said, give $200 to this person. The Achrav, and afterward the pliny. The Achrav, and after that, the pliny to that person. We say, whoever's koidim the star is Zeichel. Therefore, Yotza Olav Star Chayv. And therefore, in this case, since there is a first, second, there's a sense of priority here. If a Star Chayv comes out, he goes collects only from the last person. Because the second person can say, I left the property there for you, because it didn't you go to Bnei Chayv rather than so you go to the Chayv. Ain loy, if let's say there's not sufficient, he then gave him a fun if he collects the balance from the guy before him. And he ain't gave him a fun. The Afagav, and even though the Kama Bainis is a Bas of the Buddhist, one of the first guy collected Bainis, and the second guy is a Buddhist. The din is that he cannot go to the first guy, because the guy can say, I left you a place to where you collect from. Now, we're talking here about Matana. It's true. By Lekeach, we understand. You go to the last person. Our question was, what happens by Makabli Matana? Do we protect the rights? We see clearly that we do. We'll go to the last person, even though he might have Zabudius. The previous person might have Bainis. You don't say, oh, you're entitled to Bainis, go to person number 2. No, same protections. Ubasa Zabudius. Is a Buddhist Gabi, the Bela Gabi. Shmamna is a cliff mid, Matonanami over a bunch of kata. Cliff mid, but you also make you also by Matana, you also make a takana to protect the rights of the beneficiary. There's no idea. Even cases you can argue that Matna Shchivan is different than other Matanas, they're not making any difference. Says no. Who told you that Tunu means a Matana? He owes all, they're all lenders. He says, through pay him, they pay him, and they pay him. Says what's Tunu come on? Tunu b'chayva. When he said Tunu, it doesn't mean a gift. Tunu means pay out my debts. So therefore, we have no raya here whatsoever regarding Matanas. The Lerze started the Mount Kaddim. If we're talking about Balchois, then it's not a question of who he paid back first. It's a question of who star predates who star, and that's how you divide. That's how you pay out. So the Gemara, no, it's irrelevant what he said when he's dying. Pay him. You have to pay first the first star, and then pay the second star, and then pay the third star. And who needs Achrav? Even if you didn't say Achrav. If 3 people there, and even you say Achrav, whoever star is first, second, third. So the Gemara, Relech, they started the Mount Kaddim. So the Gemara told my case, the Lekka started is a move up, there's no star. We'll call a Kaddim star, it says clearly whoever is first in star, the star to kid is we're talking about the star of the Savah, whoever's named the first in the star of Savah. If he doesn't say Achrav, it's all together. If he says Achrav, then you buy him, or I feel a Matan Nami, I can argue it's a Matan as well. Well, like Kasha. You know what it means by Goyim Achron? You know what it means over here? You're right. Maybe by Matana, if the second guy has Bainis, the third guy has a Buddhist, you have the right to go make a beeline straight to the second guy. Because Matana, there's no protection. Maybe. What do you mean Goyim Achron? It means my Goyim Achron ain't nifsed ela Achron. That it doesn't matter who he collects from. If he goes to the middle person then turns around because he's titled to Bainis. The middle person then goes to the third person and says, "Well, I didn't get my share, and I come before you. When the Mishriman I gave out his property, I came before you, but now I never got anything because Balchayv always had a right to it. So give me what you got because that's really mine." That's what it means. Ein Goyim Ach means the one who loses out is the last person. But the Balchayv, maybe he goes to the first person, second person, and collects his Bainis. So you have no right. Made his protection for Matana. Or you boys say, Mr. Omar, the case, the Shabakula Dadi, they all have exactly the Bain, they all have Bainism. So, of course, he goes to the last person. So, the Gemara, we remain with the question unresolved. Says the Gemara, it says in the Mishnah, let's say if the land turned out to be stolen, he goes back to the vendor to collect his money, gets reimbursed for the property that he gets even from the lukuches, but the improvements on the field or the fruits on the field, he can only collect directly from the vendor, not from any of the lukuches. We protect the lukuches as far as paydas is concerned. Why? My time. What's the chiluk? If the purchaser has the right to collect the land itself from the lukuches from this vendor, the ganif, why can't he collect also for the payers? Because the Nigzor has the right to take the field away with lock, stock, and barrel. Why can't he collect? This is a protection again. In other words, we have a protection of Milva Bishtar versus Milva Peh. Milva Peh, you can't go to Kuchas. Why? Because the Kuchas don't know that there are any outstanding debts. How are they supposed to know? So they can't protect themselves. But when it comes to Milva Bishtar, they right away know. If you don't see it, at least there's a coil. People hold their loans. We'll find out how much it is. And they'll say, well, he has assets there. I left behind enough property there to cover all of his debts. So therefore, we need only where there's a coil, we say that you can collect the lukuchas because they should have protected themselves. But where there's no coil, they couldn't have known. We need to protect lukuchas. Otherwise, people stop buying, and the whole world will stop. The whole world of commerce will stop. So my time rules are because it's not written down. When he sold the shtar mechiras karka. Yeah, even if you're right there, I'm going to reimburse you or take responsibility for the property, take responsibility for the payers. But because the payers are non-existent at the time of the sale, they'll only grow later. Nobody talks about it. There's no coil about it. Nothing happens there. Or it's maybe as if it's not written. So the payer, as far as the payer is concerned, is no different than milva peh. And milva peh is not entitled to go to kuchas to collect. Because we need to protect the purchasers for that. But they had no way of knowing. What about the providing for a person's wife, the habanas and daughter, the command, the ksivadami? Everyone knows that it's a t'nai bezin that a person dies they from his estate. He has to get fed and his daughters, and therefore, as soon as he got married, as soon as this man married this woman, everyone knows that he has to take care of her even post his death. So tonight, Uktani Emetzin, and yet it says you don't take from muzzin of a woman, everything else. She goes to the same to collect. You don't take also from the kuchas. If let's say there's no assets left from the person who died, it's a tonight bezin that he has to provide for his wife and his daughter. You can go to you don't go to the kuchas to collect. Why not? It's commanded cost done. You say ksiva is the whole thing. Amalei Hasemi Kora Hachi Iskin. This is how the holding the Tanai Bezin. So because of Tanai Bezin, the Chatchila they made the Tanai as follows: that it's being written that any assets that are where the person who died, the women have the right to collect from. The Ein Ksuvin Hein Eitzim Shabadim. But as far as Mishabadim are concerned, they don't have the right to collect for them because it never ends. They can collect for the rest of their lives. Because they are not written down. As far as Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned, it's not considered written down, documented. Why? Because then nobody is going to every person is married. So who's ever going to buy fields from this person? There's no end. So therefore, we made a protection. Same question, same discussion. Same question. We had to make part of the kind, and as far as Moshe is concerned, once it's sold, it's sold. You can't go to them. Rabbi Chanina says another reason. Fish ain't tzuvin. The problem is not because the Chatchila Tanai Bezin had to be made in such a way, in such a format that it only gives you the right to collect Menachayim. It's because since there's no cap, therefore you cannot go ahead and collect. We have to protect the kufas because there's no way of them ever, even they know about it. And even if it's tzuvin, how are they going to protect themselves? They'll say, we left your property. But do you know how much property to leave behind? No. So then it's on a shear, and then everything will stop. You have to put some protection in place. Yiboil, we have a question that Rabbi Chanina, do we need tzuvin ksuvin boy? Do we need both tzuvin and ksuvin? No, it has to be written down as well as a fixed amount. Tzuvin, if it's just a fixed amount, even though they're not written. In other words, does he hold, this is how Rashi learns, Taisin disagree, that maybe he holds that a milva pay you can collect Mishabad. Why? Even though it's not written, there's no real coil, but there's a fixed amount, $100. And there's a fixed amount, okay, you have to bear it. Or no, that a milva pay you never collect. You never collect from Mishabadim because it's not ksuvin. You need both. You need ksuvin and you need a ksuvin as well. Taisa said, when definitely talking about loans over here because everyone agrees in the middle of the you cannot collect Mishabadim at all. We'll have in Bobasa at the end of it that you cannot collect Mishabadim. So you have to protect the buyers. And we're talking about other kinds of debts like Mazanis and these kind of things. For example, it says you said you're going to feed the daughter for 5 years, so but you didn't write it down. But it's a fixed amount. What's it then? Do you then have a right to go to Shabbat? It's not like one of the problems we said before was it never ends. It never ends. If she doesn't get married, it never ends. Here we're saying, oh, I put an amount 5 years and we'll take care of her after if he passed away. We learn somebody died. He left behind 2 daughters. Now we learned so this that we have a thing called that we have to take care of the girls. They should get married. 1/10 of the nechasim, even though they don't yashin, the boys yashin, but they have to provide 1/10 of the nechasim. And then we said of the 10 girls, there's nothing left. So we said it's like a saraisa that made Rebbe. 1/10 was left behind, 1/10 was left behind, and so on. Now Toshma Didma Misha made a guy died. And he left behind 2 daughters, Uben, and a son. The first daughter took 1/10 of the nechasim to take care of herself when she got married. To get married, and so on. That's the nadan that she brings into the marriage. So she gets a 10%. But now the son died, and what happens? The state divides into 2 girls. So the first girl says, "Too bad that I was lucky. We divide equally, split equally the balance." And the second one says, "Not fair. You got your 10%. Let me get my 10%, and then we'll split." What happens? She loses out. That's it. It's a kana. It didn't happen. Amar b'chanina. I don't understand. We say much more than that. We say that Maitzi and Lepanasa, the aim Maitzi and Mazaina is taka. When it comes to Mazaina, is we don't go to the kuchas. But Panasa, this 10% that these girls are entitled to, if the person dies and there's not enough assets, that we go to the kuchas to collect. So Madar, she can go to the kuchas to collect. Here, it wasn't even divided yet. They're sitting right there in the father's estate. She shouldn't be able to get her Panasa. Panasa means a dowry. She shouldn't be able to get a Panasa. The aim is you said that she loses out. She can go to a friend to collect back from the state that's sitting here unaccounted for.
Wasn't the whole kind of the girls can go knocking on doors?
Yeah, exactly. And that's separate. That's yeah, true. But we don't make that cheshbon that if she has a job. She's still entitled to Isra Nechasa until she gets married. Rashi actually added here also, or until when she b'shas bagros, she becomes 12 and a half years old. The Gemara actually says no, it's only if she's getting married, not 12 years old. But here Rashi says b'shas bagros oinusuyim. Little Isra Nechasa machnasa panasa to be ready. So the Gemara. Well, Panasa, the maker's kaitzer. Rab Chanina clearly said here that Panasa she's entitled to. Now Panasa is maker's kaitzer, right? It's a fixed amount, 10%. It's not written anywhere. The comments here, and yet you're saying clearly you're allowed to go to a kuchas to collect the Panasa. So we see that that as long as ksuvin is good enough. Shiny Panasa, Panasa is different. Even the Eastern color, everyone knows that you have daughters, you have to take care of them, you got to give them a dowry. It's commanding ksividami. It's as if it's written down. Something that everyone knows, like a tonight business, is written down. Stop here. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow is a tonus, and you can have coffee